That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette, and we say good afternoon. So, Jim, let me go with your first headline today, which says, here are 9,167 reasons why you shouldn't clutch your pearls over floor crossing. Please explain.
Yeah, I'm doing this as a public service, even though I'm going to wind up probably getting people more infuriated. But let's face it, we've had to replace a few phone lines over the past couple of weeks with people sizzling them up, expressing their outrage over these floor crossings from the Conservatives and indeed the NDP to the Liberal Party. And, you know, it's not right. And what's the matter? We keep saying, well, you know, it's a system. It's not illegal. It's a system. Well, just for fun, folks, while you're freaking out about that, just consider this, okay? This past weekend, nobody consulted you on this. You probably didn't even pay attention to it. A total of 9,167 people chose who was going to run Quebec with a population of more than 9 million for the next 6 months, okay? You had 20,000 CAC members, only, 77% of whom decided to cast their ballots. It's about 15,000. I did my ciphering because Madame Trachette got about 57 and change percent on that. It worked out to 9,167 votes. I'm telling you, buddy, tonight we are going to have margins of victory that will be twice or three times bigger than that number in those by-elections, in those federal by-elections that are going on. But once again, it's not illegal. It is part of the system. But it is, to a certain extent, another example of how galling sometimes this can be. Because on the one hand, we do talk about democracy, but on the other, the chief political officer, the person who, whether you like it or not, is going to dictate Quebec's destiny for the next 6 months, political destiny, economic destiny, was voted into office perhaps by fewer people who you will see if you use public transit to get home between, say, downtown Montreal and the West Island. So I just wanted to put that in some kind of context. Okay. And remember, folks, it could happen again.
Well, let me go back to that just for a sec. So I'm going to say not a big surprise. I know I asked you who you thought would win. It's been Christine Fréchette's to lose since the get-go, despite the last-minute sort of decision by Simon Jolin Barrette to throw his weight behind Bernard Drinville. Any of this surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise. Oh, actually, I got to tell you, I think Bernard did a little better than I thought he would. I thought for sure he was going to be kind of get whooped. And, he pulled like 40, 42 or something. Listen, what I did walk away from that entire exercise with, please don't think this party is going to be united. And please don't think you're not going to start seeing, metaphorically speaking, shots fired perhaps even as soon as next week. There is a fundamental divide between how Bernard Drinville and company, i.e. Jolin Barrette, and all those other identity-based populists in the CAQ, and Madame Trachette sees the future of Quebec. And it's going to be very interesting. And it's not for nothing that the head of the PQ, which is also in the identity peddling business, puts out a plea to CAQ members. Yeah. Remember, if you're unhappy, you'll always have a home with us, and it is a bit galling because on top of everything else, Aaron, what kind of got lost in the shuffle is with this leadership vote. Was the whole idea that, Léger put out another survey and, once again, neck and neck with the Liberals and the PQ. That's what it's going to be in the next election. Liberals are creeping up. They're still 17 points behind the PAC with the Francophone vote, but guess what? That gap is getting narrower with every succeeding poll. But what really makes me clutch my pearls is when I look at what are the issues that will, motivate your vote in this coming election. 54% health and social services, 45% cost of living, buying power, 25% education. But wait a second. Where's the Quebec identity and language and culture? Yeah. The thing that dominated the entirety of the CAQ convention this weekend, that scored 15%. Actually, it did better than holding a referendum on the sovereignty of Quebec, which scored all of 7%. We are being sold a bill of goods to a certain extent by mainstream media and certainly by a lot of politicians who are pretending that the populace is whipped up, that there's this fury going to come out here. Finally, it's the last gasp for the sovereignist movement in Quebec. And in fact, the sovereignist movement, and I'm sorry if people don't like the idea. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. It's on its deathbed. Okay, it's literally dying off. A lot of supporters who were pretty spry in 1976 are no longer with us, or how can I put it? they're a little more restrained these days. But the other thing, Aaron, is if you look at all the blood and treasure, the PQ threw into a federal by-election in Terrebonne. Tonight is a referendum on all these guys. It's a referendum on the Bloc Québécois. It's a referendum on the Parti Québécois. And I got to tell you, those guys had better win and had better win big. Because if they don't, the message is going to be loud and clear that even the good burghers of Terrebonne figured out, let's be on the side of the government for a change. Let's get things done for a change, as opposed to perpetually beating our chest in grievance over, God knows what. So it's going to be very, very interesting as far as I'm concerned. But believe me, a lot of people say, well, it's all coalescing. It's going to be the Liberals versus the PQ. Right now, if I was Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, I would really be worried about keeping my party's structure together between now and voting day in October.
Which does kind of raise the point, Jim, and I know we talked about it once the numbers kept going, as far as a referendum or separation, they just kept going lower and lower, and then Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon then decided, you know what I'll do? I'll just say, well, it could be in our third or fourth year of a PQ mandate before I actually go ahead and do that, as if somehow that would appease voters. Does he change, given the fact that the numbers are as low as they've ever been before, given the fact that the Liberals provincially, at least according to the last poll, are doing so well and literally nipping at their heels? Does he somehow change or talk about the referendum or talk about separation? What do you do when you're near him?
He's going to have to. And the fact is, you and I have mentioned, and remember, look at these numbers. These are léger. These are hardly numbers from a Liberal-friendly, what is perceived as a Quebec Liberal-friendly firm. But I'll tell you right now, if the Liberals are doing this well, at the same time as you and I, and a lot of our listeners are saying, where the hell is Charles Milliard? Wait till he starts campaigning. I mean, what's going to happen there? I mean, what if they really start to move out in the regions, really start to get people to notice them again and realize that they're an alternative to this ridiculous 8 years of incompetence, division, and pettiness? It won't be that hard to sell. But you know what? Good old PSPP. He's painted himself into a corner using his tongue as a brush. He's made these commitments to sovereignty, to a referendum. And I got to tell you, Aaron, I think in his case, because people perceive him, by and large, as a very stand-up guy, if he flip-flops or if he tries to find some way to weasel out of it, I think he's going to pay a huge price for that in the polls.
You're kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation as him, aren't you?
Well, that's why you have to choose your words carefully when you go into politics, Aaron.
Going to be very interesting to see. And Jim, you're saying, by the way, again, I want to point out what you just mentioned a second ago. This election tonight, this by-election in Terrebonne, there's much more significance to this than just losing this particular by-election.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I mean, we're talking about, will the Liberals get their majority? Take it to the bank, folks. The Liberals are going to have their majority, okay? But the real question now is this riding, which was won by one vote by the Liberals, and the Supreme Court itself ordered a redo, okay? And the idea being that, this is the hill they have chosen metaphorically to die on, the PQ and the BQ. I think it was a dumb move, but you know what? There you go. I'm not there to counsel them. But the fact is, if they lose, there is absolutely no way they will be able to talk their way out of it and say, well, it's because of A, B, and C. À la prochaine. There won't be no prochaine. The message will be loud and clear. Time's up, boys.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.